My name is Brongo, and I am really the business official at Palmyra Macedon Central School District. I've been doing that for about 5 years, and I was a history teacher before that. And I've been except for undergraduate, I've been a lifelong Wayne County resident. And the school district is a member of the council, and I saw in the summary of the last meeting, those questions about governmental purchases. And it would be nice if governments and schools went to Wayne County businesses before they looked elsewhere, and it looked like there was just some confusion about how governments and schools buy stuff. What are the rules that we have regarding purchasing? So I thought, well, that's something I can help with, and so I offered to come to just give a quick overview of here are the rules that schools and governments are working under, and here are the things that you could do if you want to do more business with schools and with governments, and see if what can we do next. So I'd be happy to be on that committee to talk about how do we make sure schools and governments look more to Wayne County before they look elsewhere.
Awesome.
So let me start with to kind of set the stage to explain where schools and governments are coming from, why we do the things that we do. Let me give a real life personal example. My father has a plumbing business in Wayne County, a small plumbing business, and he owns it. It's his company. And just last weekend, he got back from one of his suppliers sent him on an all-expenses paid trip to Florida, not really business related other than the supplier was sending him. He got to spend the weekend fishing, skeet shooting, drinking, eating, all expenses paid, all the airfare paid, the place paid for, everything paid for. And he comes back and tells me about it, and it sounds like a lot of fun and like they treated him really well, and I can just say, wow, that's cool. And there's no outrage, there's no, people just say, oh, that's neat, that's great that you got that opportunity. Now imagine I come back and say, you're the food supplier, or your mayor,
board meeting in this history.
yeah, or your highway superintendent, somebody like that, someone in government or a school district. We can't do those things. It's two different worlds, and the difference, of course, is with my father's business, that's literally his business. No one else needs to worry about it. In public, we're not dealing with our own money. We're trusted with your money, with taxpayers' money. And so, in general, almost all of the purchasing rules are about making sure that we make wise use of taxpayer money. And so, let me go. I've organized this into some questions you might have, and I'll go through the answers to each briefly. But also, don't be afraid to stop me if you've got questions, and at the end, if you've got questions, I'll answer those too. I'll start with what appeared might be one of the first questions. Could governments just give preference to local vendors? Could we just say, could Palmac School District say, we're going to give preference to the businesses within Palmac School District? Or could Wayne County businesses, any Wayne County government say, we're going to give preference to the businesses in Wayne County? And the short answer is no. There's some limited exceptions for if a local government had a local law that was on the books before 1953, there are some limited exceptions. In general, the answer is no. General municipal law says that you got to get the best price for stuff. It doesn't matter where the supplier is or where the business providing the service is. You got to try to get the best value for the taxpayer. And the comptroller has issued opinions on that govern what we do, and said flat out, no, you can't do that. You can't give preference. You can't give to the local business unless they would have gotten the contract otherwise anyway. Now that doesn't mean we can't do things to try to encourage more business. And it doesn't mean we can't do things to encourage, like me, to call businesses in Wayne County before I call others. It doesn't mean we can't try to stimulate more cooperation like that. It just means that all other things being equal, we can't give preference to the local business. So what are the rules in general that we're operating under? All municipalities, including school districts, have some limits that are set by the state. The state says that if we're gonna do any public works contract and the value of that contract is gonna be over $35,000, then it must be put out to bid, and we have to award to the lowest responsible bidder. And for purchasing contracts, it's anything over $20,000. And those amounts are an aggregate amount for the year. So for us, for example, school supplies, every year is always more than $20,000, so it's always something that has to go to the lowest responsible bidder. Those limits have just recently been raised for about, I think it was 30 or 40 years. The limits were $10,000 for purchasing and $20,000 for public works. So they were, at the time they were set decades ago, they were pretty high, but they've become relatively low since. So what it means is, for most of what we do, we've got to do business with the lowest responsible bidder.
The 35,000 is for,
That's for public works, meaning generally construction, so renovations and additions, things like that. And then we've got other rules regarding that. The Wicks law says, like we've got a construction project happening right now, not only do we have to put it out to bid, but we also have to put it out to 4 separate types of contracts. So we have to have, like if you were doing if you're a private business or a homeowner doing a project, you generally just hire a general contractor, and then that general contractor worries about all the subs. We have to hire a general contractor and then split out the mechanicals separately. So we have an HVAC contract, and a plumbing contract, and an electric contract. So in this particular project we got going now, one of the prime contractors is a Wayne County business. The last 3 projects we've had one of the 4 primes be a Wayne County business, so we've been fortunate there, but it's not because they were Wayne County businesses. They had to be the lowest responsible bidder. Are there any exceptions to those bid limits? Yes, there are a bunch of them. These exceptions are not always about getting the best price for the taxpayer. If you look through the list of exceptions, sometimes they make a lot of sense. Other times you can tell that there's a little bit of politics involved in the exceptions that have been written into laws over time. So some of the examples that make sense are logical are if there's an emergency. If our roof caves in today, it doesn't make sense that before repairing it, we're going to have to put a legal notice in the paper, advertise for bids, wait 45 days, then award the bids, then start construction. We need to get that roof repaired now. Another exception is when there's only one possible source, only one place we possibly could get something. Utilities are the most common example. We bid out like electric, we bid out the supply because they're a choice, but the delivery, we don't have a lot of choice. For water, we don't have a lot of choice for who supplies the water to the building. Other exceptions are we can buy secondhand stuff from other governments. Professional services are not something that need to go to the lowest responsible bidder. So when we hire an attorney, or when we hire a school doctor, or when we hire an architect to design the project, we do not necessarily have to go with the lowest responsible bidder. We can issue requests for proposals, and then based on a number of factors, not just price, we can award to the contractor that feels in the best interest of the taxpayers. We're this year issuing RFPs for insurance and for external auditing and for internal auditing. So that's one of the exceptions. And then let me skip to the last item. There are also several preferred sources in New York State. In other words, before we even go to a lowest responsible bidder, New York State law says you're supposed to governments and schools are supposed to first check with these places. Corecraft is the prison industry, the stuff that they make in the correctional institutions, the industries for the blind, and industries for the disabled, and veterans workshops. So we're supposed to go to those places first before looking for lowest responsible bidder. And then what about things that are below those bid limits? Our obligation is to, let me make sure I get the quote right, to ensure the prudent and economical use of public money. So what about something that we're going to be buying something for the year, but we're only going to spend $9,000 for the whole year on. What is our obligation there? The state says you gotta ensure the prudent and economical use of public money. How each municipality does that is gonna be pretty similar, but it's up to each municipality or school district. And so, in general, you're gonna find that they each have either a local law or a school board policy or a procedure on here's how we buy things when the purchase is not gonna exceed those bid limits. And so at Palmac, for example, our thresholds are that when we're purchasing stuff or services, not public works, if we're gonna spend over $10,000, but up to that, if we're gonna spend over $1,000, we require, at least 3 written competitive quotes. They don't have to be bids, we don't put legal notices in the paper, it's not a formal process where the Board of Education awards a bid. It's just, a principal wants to buy some equipment, I say you gotta show me 3 competitive quotes so that we make sure that we're getting the best possible price. Below those limits, if it's single things below $1,000, every municipality is gonna have their own threshold. Ours is $1,000, we don't require competitive quotes below $1,000. And it's just a matter of cost benefit. How much extra savings will you get for the time that it takes someone to do comparison shopping? Now, sometimes people will anyway, because they know they get more bang for the buck out of their budget every dollar they can save by getting competitive quotes, but it's not required that they do that under $1,000.